Hello and welcome to the mill. I am your host, Dusty Crane, and this week, let's take it back to my favorite game of all, to Scythe. There's been a lot of Scythe adjacent stuff going on, whether it's the rumors of an LCG or not an LCG. Let me be so clear about that, since that got the idea of LCGs like it just sticks in some people's craw a certain way, so they wouldn't be an LCG anyway. Back to Scythe itself. Recently, the Scythe iOS beta keeps going, and it's still good. I'm waiting to show anything until someone else makes it readily available, because Asmodee Digital does have a privacy request. So we're going to go ahead and follow the rules, okay? The second thing, kind of Stonemaier adjacent, is BGG. If you haven't seen, is doing their Art Series 4, and they do posters based on games done by different artists. So we had a couple of Stonemaier entries this time around in Series 4, and so I thought we would go ahead and take a look at that. I'll go ahead and toss a picture up there. This is a Wingspan print by Nick Nazaro, and he did the art for Dragoon and Human Era. You can see it's kind of a whimsical poster. It's very cartoony, shows a variety of birds and kind of represents the different landscapes that we're used to seeing in Wingspan. You see you got a little forest at the bottom, and some grassland and some ocean or some waterlands, if you will. So that looks super cool. This one right here, though, the Scythe poster by Andrew Bosley, who we know obviously from Everdell, but especially if you're a Stonemaier fan, Tapestry. So Andrew went ahead and put together this, it's kind of a cool throwback, almost military recruitment poster, back to the, I guess, point, we want you to join the U.S. Army or whatever. It shows kind of like this mech, stepping into a river and farmers waving, and it says, it kind of made me chuckle there where it said, it's time for a river walk. See Europa by mech. Visit the deployment office for details. I just like how it kind of works in the Scythe, I guess, vernacular with deployment, deploy a mech. And so I really liked that. I think Andrew did a really good job with this print. Might be the first one I actually want to pick up. I mean, all the art on these have been incredible, but they haven't really either been a game that I'm in love with, or the art wasn't anything I particularly care for. But this Scythe poster is hitting all of those things I really like. And so, yeah, great job by both artists, by Nick and Andrew. But I really, really, really like the Scythe one. So, what to talk about this week? I thought we would talk about the fact that we have a really impactful new Scythe expansion, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But in order to do this, you need a lot of pre-existing kind of Scythe content. So you need the base game of Scythe, and you need the Wind Gambit, and you need Scythe, The Rise of Fenris. So this particular fan expansion was done by Steven St. John, which is a name you should be familiar with here, especially if you're paying attention to fan-made expansions. Steven is, pops up kind of frequently in, Stonemaier game fan expansions. Anyway, so his new one is Scavengers of Europa, and it really does a nice job of tying together many pieces of the different expansions. And in terms of what you actually have to print out to, accommodate, pretty simple. Just this little board right here for every person playing, so one per player. And I'll go ahead and explain Scavengers of Europa. What this kind of does is it kind of represents the fact that, in the Wind Gambit, we have these airships moving around the board, but also thematically, it represents the fact that, there was just a great war across this continent, and there's resources, kind of spread throughout wherever battles occurred or something like that. And so what this kind of represents is you have these airships that are moving around the terrain, and they might have seen an old battlefield and said, hey, we're going to go ahead and land and take these resources. Now, how this plays out mechanically is Before I go into this, I know we don't typically talk Rise of Fenris spoilers. I think the only part of Rise of Fenris that's used is something that's described early in the rule book and organically appears by game 4. So if you don't want any Rise of Fenris spoilers, and you don't have the game, or you're not interested in fan expansions, maybe that's it for you this week. But if you are willing to wander into very, very, very light Rise of Fenris spoilers, then let's go ahead and get to it. So how this works is every person, so you set up the game as you would the regular Wind Gambit rules. So you go ahead and get your airships out, you get an aggressive and a passive tile. Whether or not you want to use the new ending resolution tiles, that's optional. But you are going to choose a passive and aggressive tile for your airships. Now, everybody is going to get one of these, and what this does is, as a part of the setup, you are going to use, and here's where the spoilers come in, just warning, it's a way to distribute infrastructure mods and mech mods. So you're going to go ahead and everybody is going to get 2 mech mods face down, and you're going to stack them right here on this pile here for iron. And then for wood and oil and food, these are each going to get 1 infrastructure mod, and then you are going to go ahead and take the additional mech mods, 1 per player, and just kind of set it off to the side. And the reason for that is if you scavenge one of these types and you get a mech mod that you already have on your mat, then you can go ahead and discard and draw from that pool of extras. So that's what that is for. So let's go ahead and talk about what Scavengers of Europa actually brings. And what this does is it gives the airships another reason to be patrolling the board. So there is some talk about, if you're going to play with the airships, what do they add? I mean, this Scythe I've seen described as a race, and I know it's not a racing game per se, but people want to try and keep the turns as low as possible and really optimize. And it's a game that if you make it 20 turns, then maybe it was intentional, or maybe you're just not playing with people that are really racing the end game. But so those airship turns are very valuable. This gives it an additional benefit, because if you end your movement of your airship, mind you, you can move your airship and stop over top of one of these resource types, and as long as there's not another enemy airship there, you can perform the scavenge action at the end of your movement. So if you were to stop over top of this iron and you ended your movement, and there can even be opponent workers or buildings or whatever, mechs, as long as it's not an airship, then you can scavenge that territory. And so in this case, if you ended your movement of your airship on a place to get iron, I think that's mountain, then if you stopped it there, you would go ahead and flip over both your mech mods, and you'd choose one to keep. If they're both duplicates of mech mods you already have, that's when you're going to start drawing from that extra pile that you set aside. The very first one that's unique is yours, and just like any other game of Scythe, the benefits are optional. So if you end up drawing these mech mods and you don't like it doesn't work with your kit, or it's just not a power that you like, you don't have to take it. Now, these other ones are infrastructure mods. So the very first time you land on a forest, you would go ahead and take the infrastructure mod from here and use it. It's a one-time power, so essentially you have 3 infrastructure mods you can use in that game. And it's simple because it uses pieces of, I've talked many times about the fact that the Rise of Fenris, in my opinion, really is kind of a love letter to the fans. It's a toolbox that you can create all kinds of different build types, or you can mix and match different pieces of it and get a completely different game. And that's what I really like that Steven did here, is he used pieces that are already present in the box, have already been play tested. We know these modules work. It's a really nice addition to the game of Scythe. I really did like how something as simple as this little mat here brings pieces from the Rise of Fenris. It brings pieces from the airship, and really gives the airship additional a role in that game. You might, these airship or these infrastructure mods, these mech mods can really make a difference. And Steven did a good job of writing up the rules. They're available on BGG. I'll link to them in the description. But I mean, there's stuff like, he's thought about when these things resolve, in terms of when your movement is technically resolved, when you're technically scavenging. And so really any questions you have are kind of already answered, but if you do find any, you are of course welcome to ask Steven in either the Scythe Facebook group or BGG. Now, one other thing that I thought was really cool about this is that's great if you're playing these games, with other people. Steven thought of that too. There is an autonomy mat and autonomy, an Automa mat. Autonomy is a backup product. Anyway, so what is kind of cool is, as the Automa uses the rules to move around the board with their airships, they have to follow the same rules you do. If they go to a place that your airship is already sitting on, then they're not going to, be able to scavenge anything. But if they do, the very first time they land their airship on a type, type here, you would go ahead and put 1 coin down on the mat. And then the second time they did it, it would be, I think it's 3 coins, or maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah. Well, at the end, in total, the Automa can additionally get an additional 10 coins. And so it's a nice way to add some challenge to your games as well. So overall, I think that the Scavengers of Europa is just a really simple, clever fan expansion, and it really goes to show that the toolkit that we're given with the Rise of Fenris really is very flexible. And I look forward to seeing, maybe this will spark something in some of you guys that, oh, hey, that gives me an idea for another type of expansion. I'm really looking forward to seeing those. That's almost all I have for you this week. I'm going to go ahead and at the end of this video, I started to watch Jamie's Facebook live stream, and I just happened to be doing it at my editing computer. So I thought I'll just go ahead and bring the video in, and I just started watching it and chopping it up, the parts that, weren't directly related to Stonemaier games themselves. So if Jamie was asked a question about the LCG, for example, I kept that clip in there, and then the stuff that's, personal, like people, it's cool to get to know Jamie on that level, but like there's some people that, hey, we want to know what Biddy's doing, what's Walter doing, what's the chocolate today? Some people care, some people don't. But I went ahead and I was like, let me see, I'm kind of curious, like how much is actually Stonemaier talk and how much is just shooting the breeze with Jamie. And so I'm going to go ahead and toss that at the end of the video here so you can check that out or not. I'm going to put it after I say bye, but before the absolute end credits, so you can get that silly screen at the end that says, next video or whatever, or best for you. In any event, that is all I have for you this week. A little bit of Scythe fan expansion talk, some cool BGG posters, and now Jamie's Just the Business Wednesday Facebook live stream. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.
Ryan says, any updates on the My Little Scythe expansion today? Yeah, I just posted about this, Ryan, in the My Little Scythe group, actually I think just yesterday or the day before. So what's going on with the expansion is we printed it, we made it, and before the Chinese New Year, and we shipped it out of China on the way to various fulfillment centers around the world. And then I realized that I left a few important components out of the expansion. Totally my fault. Just one of those things when you make an expansion, there are basically some player tokens that are missing from it. And so we had to go back and make them. But then China has been shut down for quite some time now due to the Chinese New Year and the coronavirus. So they haven't been able to actually make those components yet. So fairly soon they will make those components when our factory in China reopens. They will make those components and they will air freight those components to the various fulfillment centers that have the expansion. And once I know the timeline for that, I will start talking a lot more about the expansion. But until then, like the factory is pretty much closed, so I don't even know how long it's going to take to make this little component pack that we need to add to the expansion. So hopefully it'll be a spring announcement / release, or at least pre-order. Probably looking at an early summer retail release at this point. and a somewhat limited retail release because of this thing that I did where I messed up and left these components out of it. It creates some complications when entering the expansion into distribution. So mostly for this first print run, we'll mostly be selling it directly to consumers and directly to retailers instead of adding distribution to it. But I look forward to making more copies of it and getting them through distribution as well. Mo says, when will the Oceania Wingspan expansion come out? I haven't announced that yet because I don't really know. We're still working on it. The only reason you even know that it exists right now is because we did a charitable effort to support birds affected by the wildfires in Australia. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even talked about the next location for the expansion yet. Steven says, not sure if you mentioned it yet, but I love Andrew Bosley's Scythe print that's going to be part of the new Board Game Geek poster series. Yeah, I just saw that the other day myself, and I mean, Andrew's someone that I've gotten to work with through Tapestry. He's probably best known for Everdell at this point, but his artwork is all over Tapestry. And he was invited by Board Game Geek to make a poster of a game that he loved and admired, and I think he chose Scythe, or maybe Board Game Geek chose Scythe. And so he made a classic-looking, almost like 1950s style poster for Scythe that you can see on Board Game Geek now. No connection to Stonemaier Games or even Jakob. It's just something that he did for fun, and Board Game Geek is doing for fun. And I thought it's a really cool poster. I thought Andrew did a really fantastic job with it. Vincent said, any plans on making Wingspan into a mobile app? So Stonemaier Games doesn't make any mobile apps or digital apps at all, but we do license our games to developers so that they can handle that. And so right now there's a company called Monster Couch they've had the rights for it for about a year now. So they've been working on this app for about a year, and it should be ready. I think they're targeting this spring, maybe early summer for the release of it. So it's coming quite soon, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. We did some playtest on Friday. There was a designer in town that I've been working with, kind of back and forth on a design where they're designing part of a game. I'm designing versions of it. We're trying to figure out what the right fit is. And so we got together as a team with the designer on Friday and played 2 different versions of the game and had a good chat about it. So I know that's very vague. I'm not going to tell you what the game is because it's still very much in flux, but we had a good meeting there, good play test. I also did a blog post. My blog post last Thursday apparently was spread around quite a bit among industry folk. It was about replacement parts. Last week was the week that Asmodee announced that they are implementing a very different replacement parts system than they have in the past, where if you have a game that is missing a part or has a broken part, then you actually need to return the entire game to where you bought it and then get a replacement from that source. And Asmodee will cover them and compensate them. A very different system than what Stonemaier Games does. With Stonemaier Games, if you have a missing or broken part when you open the box, or even a couple years down the road, if you spill wine on your game or your cat eats a piece or you lose a piece or a card, you can fill out our replacement parts form and we will send it to you for free. Very different system there, but I kind of looked at the pros and cons of that and why Asmodee may have implemented that, how it might impact people. And there was a lot of chatter about that post. So if you're curious about replacement parts and how different companies approach it, feel free to check out last Friday's blog post. My Monday blog post this week was kind of a revisiting of some early Kickstarter lessons that I wrote a while ago, and updating them a little bit, kind of summarizing them so people can get the main takeaways from each of them. Looks like Joe, my coworker, just joined us. Joe's been working today on, as far as I know, Joe works from home, working on the Sunday sit-down video, the editing for that, and some proofreading for a product that we have in the works right now. Andrew says, any update on the possibility of a deck-building game in the Scythe universe? It would be an insta-buy for me and my wife. Well, that's encouraging. Yeah, I'm brainstorming a deck-building game, and it might be in the Scythe universe. We'll see. It's a format of game that I've been interested in quite some time. So right now, just I'm working a lot on one game that is not that game. And so that is kind of my side project right now. I focus a lot on this one game, and then maybe a few hours a week, or even maybe an hour or so a day, I go over and brainstorm some ideas for that. But I would say I'm close to I have gotten one prototype to the table. It was okay. So I'll hopefully get another prototype to the table soon and see where it takes me. Mo says, are there going to be more expansions for Scythe? And no, there won't be. No, not for Scythe itself. Rafal says that he plays Scythe on Steam and he's waiting for the iOS version. Do I have any idea when it's coming out? I don't have any idea. I have heard rumors that they are working on it. but that could mean it could come out in a month. That could also mean that it could come out in many, many months. So I don't know. Andrew says that he heard me mention that there was a chance for more expansions for viticulture. Any update on how likely that is to happen? I think it's fairly likely. Yeah, I don't know what it will be yet. I basically have brainstormed some ideas with a few designers that submitted their ideas to me. And a few of those designers are working on expansions. It isn't something that I am prioritizing right now as a designer myself, because I have a much bigger project that I need to focus on. But there are versions of viticulture expansions in the works with other designers. And at some point they will show them to me, and I will get more involved as a developer, maybe as a designer, but probably just as a developer for those expansions. I want to make sure that they add something very new to the game. While I love that viticulture has like more stuff expansions, like more visitors, visit from the Rhine Valley, and Tuscany, which makes it kind of a bigger, more expansive game. I want these to add a twist on the game while still retaining the core elements. So that's what we're targeting, and we will see. Definitely nothing released in 2020, but hopefully it's something in 2021. Nick says, I'm curious about the tuning changes made for the civilizations. I want to talk about your process on why the changes were made. Did it come from analytics? Would you do anything different in the second edition? So second edition, we won't, there's no second edition necessary for Tapestry. Like second editions are for if you're going to do a big revamp of the art and graphic design, or a big revamp in the mechanisms. And we just had some little tweaks that we needed to make to a few of the civilizations, and we're only at the start of the game. And it did come from analytics. Yeah, we collect data on our website from anyone who reports plays of Tapestry. We collect that on our website, and we look at it every now and then to see if there are any civilizations that are just way better or performing way worse than other ones. I think we've come to a nice sweet spot now in the revisions that we've made, and the way that I analyzed the data for the expansion was very different than the way that I analyzed it for the core game. So I'm hoping this time that with the expansion that we've caught anything up front that might have such variances in between some maybe overpowered civilizations and some underpowered ones. So having those analytics come in early, I think will have a very positive impact on any asymmetric game that we have going forward. Runer says, is it possible to mix the French wingspan with the English European expansion? It is, but I don't know why you would, because there is a French version of the European expansion too. But you could if you wanted to. We make them all, like I handle the production for all those components, so they all use the same card stock and all that stuff. It's just a different language.